Call of Duty Warzone has amassed millions of players in just a few days. It is growing as fast as any battle royale on the market, and sure, the Apex Legends surprise drop didn't quite make the waves that, well, Apex Legends did, but Warzone is a game whose legs may be just as long, if not longer. But there's going to be an obvious comparison from day one. Warzone is a battle royale, which means that it's in the same genre as Fortnite and PUBG, Apex Legends itself, but the one comparison everybody's gonna make is that first one. The one that has become a popular culture phenomenon, unlike basically any video game ever created. But there's actually a few things I think Warzone does dramatically better than Fortnite. Serious things that actually matter to the gameplay experience and to the longevity of something like this. And there are a couple of things that I think Fortnite is doing way better than any game ever created. So today, I want to talk about those things. First, the things that it does better, and then the things that it really needs to pick up on if it wants to compete in this space. It starts with something everybody's been talking about, which is the gulag. When you die in Fortnite, one of two things happens. You're downed and your teammate can come and revive you, but if you're finished off, all that you can do is wait till someone picks up your card, brings it to a truck, and brings you back into the match. And that's fun enough. It keeps people engaged even after their life has ended. And importantly, it keeps people from rage quitting immediately after death in the hopes that maybe your teammate will get you back in the game. But Call of Duty does something much more creative and much more interesting. In Warzone, when you die for the first time, you enter the gulag. And it's a 1v1 single round match to see who makes their way back onto the playfield, dropping with their initial loadout right back onto the map. And it's amazing. One, because it makes sure that people who aren't as skilled at the game at least have a chance to get back in, and it makes deaths that might not feel as fair for those unskilled players feel much less punishing. But more importantly, it keeps an entire squad engaged when one goes out. You know that you need to stay alive because there's a chance that your teammate and squad mate will be right back in. But even more important than that, you know you don't want to end up in the gulag. You do lose your loadout, and most importantly, you lose a lot of cash. But the gulag is a really, really fun addition, especially because once you're in there, you don't just hop into your 1v1. You actually have to sit there and wait in a queue, and you can watch others throw stones to kind of engage with it, show people where people are hiding, and even if your teammate is in there, help them by letting them know what you see, letting them know where their enemy is at, and actually contributing. As I mentioned in my first Warzone video, my first impressions video, there are going to be a lot of purists that hate the idea of this. It's basically a second life for those that are capable of getting it. Fortnite can feel at times like you've wasted your time. You hop into a match, you drop somewhere too hot, and you're down and out in 30 seconds, and then you can wait for your teammate, but if he's a random, you could probably expect nothing at all, and it feels like you're not making progress, you're not getting better, nothing is really keeping you engaged. A mechanic like Gulag kind of takes away that concern. But the second thing Warzone is doing so much better than its biggest competition is something that is almost inarguable. Fortnite is fun. I've actually spent a lot of time recently. I started an alt account and hopped in for like 8 to 10 hours, and I've enjoyed myself. I covered it a lot when the game launched. I actually covered Save the World as well, and then fell off. I hopped back in and found a game that was just as enjoyable as when I first played it. But something that is easily distinguishable between these two games is the way they feel. Fortnite's gunplay can feel imprecise. It can feel at times like spraying and praying even from a distance is actually a reasonable tactic. Now, with higher level play, with better players, that's absolutely an unreasonable thought. But for people just hopping into the game, just starting, especially because Fortnite really puts you in with people in the same position, your first 5 or 6 games of Fortnite, if you're a experienced gamer, will likely all be wins. But they'll also feel very arcadey from a combat perspective. And I'm not talking about the building, I'm talking about the way weapons feel. I'm talking about the way characters move. And that's okay, that's Fortnite's style. But I've yet to talk to a single person, any single person, that would say that the FPS mechanics in Call of Duty Modern Warfare are inferior to what's on hand in Fortnite. Warzone has the benefit of using a suite of mechanics that may be some of the best in the industry. The multiplayer mechanics from a Call of Duty game. Gunplay in Warzone is excellent. Weapons feel weighty, combat feels precise, and there's a reasonable skill curve across the board. Whereas I think Fortnite's skill curve really lies in its building mechanics, less so than its combat mechanics. Or the combination of those two things, I should say. Modern Warfare feels spectacular every single second you're playing it. And while it doesn't feel quote-unquote realistic, as Modern Warfare was initially marketed as, it's a beautiful balance between the boots-on-the-ground gameplay everybody loves and the tactical gameplay of games that Call of Duty has never even tried to be. And it skews much closer to that original Call of Duty gameplay. And these mechanics, and the ease with which one can pick them up, not be great at them, but pick them up, makes a giant map with 150 players feel much more exciting than menacing. Where at times Fortnite's giant map can feel overwhelming, and at times like it's working against you. And I think again that has a lot to do with how the game plays. But before we get to where I think Warzone has a disadvantage, its last advantage may be the most interesting, idiosyncratic, and maybe important advantage it has over games like Fortnite. The one challenge for every Battle Royale game is how do we keep players busy when they're not fighting one another? Where is the game when the actual combat isn't there? This is a double-edged sword for both of these games. In one way, Fortnite's doing it spectacularly better, and we'll get there, but in another way, I think Call of Duty's found this really cool middle ground for at least handling one aspect of that. And I call this alternative loot. See, in games like Fortnite or Warzone, you're opening chests, crates, and in those crates you're hoping for better gear, better weaponry, field trophies, whatever it may be. And the point is to upgrade your loadout, gather more resources. But there's this alternative loot structure that doesn't really exist in Fortnite, but does exist in Warzone, and it's the cash and contracts. I'll talk about the contracts in a bit, but let's focus on the cash. I'm not referring to plunder here, just the Battle Royale, but the cash in Warzone absolutely adds another layer to this game. You're not just trying to collect resources, which money is one of, but I mean more physical, tangible resources. You're also trying to become richer. And this changes the way you play in quite a few ways. So for example, if I know my teammate is not alive, I know I need more cash, I'm gonna play more aggressively, maybe explore a bit more, seek out engagements in hopes of downing and finishing someone off to take their cash. That cash then allows me for $4,500 to bring my teammate back into the fold. Or better yet, if I know that I'm not a great shot and the circle is getting smaller and smaller, I can go and get some more cash, find some more cash, move buildings, again seek out engagements to get something like a cluster strike or UAV, an advantage. It creates this pseudo metagame where I'm managing my dollars while managing my health. I can even get self-revive, which, by the way, let me tell you, changes the foundation of how you engage. I can't tell you how many times self-revive has literally turned an engagement around. Like here, where these two decided to res each other, instead of finishing me off, I self-revived and finished them off. But I could only do that because I was out there seeking cash. I was looking for money. I was getting into engagements specifically with the intent of getting myself that self-revive. This metagame, this cash collecting sub-mechanic really heightens the enjoyment and pushes out some of the boredom that Battle Royale games can create by kind of putting you in a position where it feels better to camp or stay in one spot as opposed to actually going out and being aggressive. But while Warzone is doing a lot of great things that I think it's doing better than games like Fortnite, there are two things that I think are going to hold it back from being the phenomenon that Fortnite is, from replicating that success, and maybe stop it from having the longevity that I think it might actually deserve. The first is something I've kind of mentioned, which is the map. Fortnite has done an absolutely incredible job of making their map a star attraction, of diversifying it, but more importantly, making it this place for events. Making it this place where you recognize each individual sublocation, making it this place that you want to learn, but most importantly is easy to learn. The map in Fortnite changes every season in serious and significant ways, not in like, oh, look at new locales, like, oh, if you go here, something insane might happen. But if you go here, you'll see something genuinely new, and you might miss the thing that isn't there anymore. Fortnite creates a map to become attached to, and part of this is due to its cartoony nature, but the other part of it is due to simple good design. Warzone just isn't built for something like that. It doesn't have the luxury of being this kind of weird cartoon world. You can't create this giant crater that Thanos is gonna pop out of, or this island where these henchmen and the agency will exist. And this isn't so much the fault of Call of Duty, just the nature of the kind of game it is. Sure, they can create these events, and they can change the map by season, but how many people will actually notice or care about the changes in a significant way? How many people have become attached to, say, TV station or the airport? I've played a lot of Warzone since its launch, and quite frankly, I couldn't care less if airport one day disappeared. And I say that even recognizing some of the locales on this initial map. And evolution at its very core. Seeing half the map this season turn into this giant spy agency thriller is really unique and really interesting. And it doesn't matter that there's no lore there. It doesn't matter that it's not realistic. For Call of Duty, those things do matter. And while that makes for a really cool, raw experience, it may keep that mass appeal away from it the same way Fortnite has. But the second thing is something I think Fortnite is doing that actually has to do with the gameplay itself, and it's kind of unrivaled in this way, and it's something that I think Call of Duty does have to figure out how to replicate in some meaningful way to keep this game alive for as long as something like its competition. Fortnite does an absolutely incredible job of keeping you busy and entertained whether or not you're even good at the game. Take something I mentioned already, this season's theme, the agency, the spy thriller. You can drop down into the agency itself, and there are tons of CPU enemies carrying amazing weaponry. You can find Midas and get his gun. You can explore the vaults, all on your own without dealing with any other players, if you're lucky enough. And things like this are scattered all across the map. It's like a mini story, a sub-mission within the game that actually has meaningful progression. You can actually get in there and get a signature unique weapon. And because Fortnite's Battle Pass is filled with so many crazy, outlandish, and interesting and unique things, all the submissions that come along with it, these goals that you get on a weekly basis, or sometimes a seasonal basis, actually mean something. Like right now, they have this Deadpool plotline. First you had to destroy a bunch of toilets, then the goal changed week to week, and eventually you get his katanas. That's really awesome, that kind of crossover. But what's really awesome is that all of these things are in the game, and they change the way you play the game. There are certain places where if you land, you don't have to just deal with other humans, you also have to deal with these agents who can be quite strong at times if you're not coming in equipped or don't know what you're doing. You can get an advantage by going after them, being aggressive. But most importantly, this changes season to season. At one point you could be Thanos or a Jedi. And these things are incredible changes to the game itself. They are things designed to keep you busy even if you're not the best player, even if you don't want to engage with other people, or most importantly, even if you're just in between engagements. And while Warzone's money does a reasonably good job of that, especially the contracts, Fortnite is unparalleled, unrivaled. The contracts in Warzone are great. They do relatively the same thing, but they're essentially boring little fetch quests, like, hey, capture this point, or open these crates in this order. And they're fine, but they're not exactly fun things to do. They're not exactly interesting. And quite frankly, I'm going to be honest, I don't know the solution to a problem like this. How do you keep people engaged in a game that can't evolve the way that something like Fortnite does? Something that's grounded in at least a semblance of realism. Or better yet, something that's just grounded at all. How do you adapt? How do you create these big events that are trending on social media and everybody's talking about and news media are picking up? How do you keep people coming back? A map change wasn't quite enough for Blackout. Will it be enough for Warzone? Can you do crossovers? Can you insert AI into this world somewhere? Just for little mini games? I mean, these things don't sound like a good idea to me. They remove the purity of what's so special about Warzone, which is that true transplant of Call of Duty into this Battle Royale setting. And I understand that Blackout was that, but I think this suite of mechanics this year and this Call of Duty are much better suited for what this is. And that's obviously an opinion you can disagree with, but the point is, how does Activision keep this alive long term? What do the developers do to keep people interested? What does an event look like? And through all of that, how do those things, those changes, those events, whatever they are, keep people engaged in the game itself, not just grinding through something to get a new battle pass upgrade? How does it make the game more fun, more interesting, more unique? How does it change it? And I think that's going to be a tough question to answer. But now I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that Warzone is a better game than Fortnite? Do you think the game feels better, plays better? Do you agree with anything I've said here, or do you disagree? And most importantly, what is the best Battle Royale on the market in your opinion? And again, your opinion. subjectively to you, which one of these is your favorite? Let me know the answer to any of those questions down in the comments below. Let's have a real conversation. As always, if you enjoyed this video, press that like button. If you haven't yet done so, also press subscribe. That way you don't miss anything I put out on this channel. Next to the subscribe button is also a little bell. That bell is just a notification button. Just make sure you're actually notified when I upload. And flashing on your screen right now are 2 more videos from this channel, 2 of the most recent probably. You can check that out to see what I've talked about recently, what's going on in the gaming world, or maybe their impressions or reviews. I actually don't know what you're looking at right now, so maybe you can find out for me. And until next time, guys, I'm out.